let's talk a little bit more about the strokes. And again, the stroke is the outline around the shape. And let's see, if you go over here to this little window, there's the stroke panel can open up. So you can click this. It looks like a bunch of little strokes. Click it. Or you can go to Window and go to Strokes. Same thing. And it gives you a bunch of options. Oh, no, I didn't make it go away. More details. More info. Show options. There we go. That's what I want. So now, same as you have right here, this number shows you the width of the stroke. And there are other options that you can play with too. So let's go to Direct Selection Tool, select this point, and then delete it. So now this is called an open shape. So we get to see the ends of the strokes here. And you can end in a different way. Right now it's just ended at the cap. It's kind of a square end right there. If you look closely, maybe I'll zoom in closer. Okay, so now we go over here. We can get a rounded cap and see how it's rounded now. And go right here, and it's projecting cap. So the stroke actually goes beyond the end of the path. Let's just make that bigger. So again, that's projecting cap, that's a rounded cap, that's plain old cap. And in almost all cases, we're just going to have a plain old cap. Let's bring that down to 9 again. Now over here, you can adjust how the corners are. So right here, this is the regular corner, just a square corner. But if you want a rounded corner, you click that, and now it's rounded. And if you want a beveled corner, you can click that. So it's good to know they're there. Don't worry about it for now. I think, it's almost giving you too much information, but I just want to put it out there. So now we're going to talk about how the stroke is aligned. And that blue line you see there is the path, and the black is the stroke that's going over the path. And again, the thickness gets thinner. And if we do that, there's like no stroke at all, but let's get it thicker again so we can see it. Now the blue line, again, that's the path, this is the stroke. And how is the stroke aligned? So right now the path goes down the middle of the stroke. If we click this, the path is, the stroke is on the inside of the path. If we click this, the stroke is on the outside of the path. This, in many cases, won't matter, but it's just good to know. Another thing you might want to play with is the dashed line. So if you click this box right here, then you have a dashed line. And right now it's square caps. If you click that, it has rounder caps. And you can change the size of the dash and the size of the gap. So if you make the gap, make it smaller, let's make it like 12. It's almost like sausages going together. If that was a square end, it's almost all the way together. And you can change the size of the dashes themselves. Let's make bigger dashes. And let's make bigger gaps. Oh, wait, I did 125. I didn't mean to do that. That's crazy. Let's do that. Oh, so what I had before, let's make it 2.5. Okay, so they're just things you can play around sometimes. If you're doing a coupon, you have a dash, we got it. But there are certain design reasons you might want to have a dashed line in there. Let's make that go away. Now, one thing you can also do is add arrowheads to the ends of the lines. And you can only do that if it's an open shape. So let's go Direct Select Tool. We'll delete that. And now we'll go to Arrowhead. Try that there. And maybe put another one over there. Then if we get rid of the fill over here, I can. So that's kind of cool. There's different types of arrows you can do. Only in certain situations would you do something like this, but it's just good to know it's out there. Personally, one of the I think one of the biggest challenges in Illustrator is to remember what these things are called. Then you can look them up. You know, if you kind of have a vague notion, I did something once with an arrow, I don't know how to do that, but if you know arrowhead, then you do a search, you can find it. So almost everything, like, you know, there's too much to remember it all at once in Illustrator. But if you can remember what the actions are called, then you can look them up later and find out how to do them. Okay, now I want to talk about the gradient tool. So over here in the toolbar, this let's select the shape first with our selection tool. Now let's go to gradient and just click on it. And now we have a gradient bar. So this, it starts out as being white to black. So it's a gradation from white to black over here. You can change the transition point by moving the center little peg. And then you can even, you can extend this, you can rotate it. So it's kind of fun. Little bastard out of there. Come on, get her that little thing. Bug head, grab this. I don't want to pull it out. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Let's put this back in the middle. So now let's change some of the colors. So this white, let's change that to pink. Get this black. Let's change it to let's change it to purple. It's kind of cool, but I think I want it to be a darker purple like that. So it's kind of the building block of how you do shading in color transitions. So that's pretty cool. That's the gradient tool. Okay, now let's try the scissor tool. And the scissor tool is over here under eraser. And it helps you cut the shape. So first let's cut that anchor. And let's cut that anchor. Now we have two different shapes. We can move it around. So we slice the shape in half. And you can slice these things anywhere. Slice this one there. Kind of chop your work into little pieces. So we'll do a little bit more on these later, but that's the scissor tool. And you'll notice we have the rounded caps on our stroke. So if we went over, we just selected them all, then we have the square caps. Okay, so let's get rid of the different scraps. And let's make a new, look at that, that color gradation I made is still in my fill area. So if I make a new shape, let's make an ellipse. It's still filled with that gradation from before, so that's kind of cool. Now I want to talk a little bit about layers. So the shapes are stacked within the layer, and then the layers themselves are stacked. So far we've been working just on one layer, and over here is your, let me get my face out of the way. My layers panel is, I can hit Windows and make layers appear, that, or I could just go right this to here directly. And if I wanted to make a new layer, I could make another gradient ellipse on top of that. And let's see if I wanted to not exactly what I'm going to do. I want to do something different. Okay, so just so you know it's different. Now the bottom layer is right like that. And if I wanted to duplicate the bottom layer, I could drag it down like that. And then I have it's a different layer, but it's hard to tell because it's exactly the same. So let me go into it. And let me change this color. Let me just change it to a solid, how about that? Okay, so now I'll move it a little bit like that. So you can see how there's three different layers, 1, 2, 3. Now if I I can lock a layer, and that prevents it from being moved. So if I go there, and then I try to move it around, I can't do anything. So that's really useful. And if I did other things within the layer, so let me go back to, let's go to layer 2 now. So I'm in layer 2, and then I'm gonna make some more shapes. Let me just make it like that. And make another one. Okay, over here. And then let me change my color to there, make another one like that. Move it over here. Now see, these things are in the second layer, so they're under the first. And this yellow one is also, it's the first one I made, so it's behind. So within, let's take a look at the layer, kind of zoom in close now. So I'm going to shut off the top layer, shut off the bottom layer. So within layer, the middle layer, and so it's always a good idea to name your layer. So I'll call this the bottom. I'll call this the middle. Really creative names I got going on here. Top. So within the middle layer, these three objects are, let's make this different color just so we can, again, this oval is at the bottom, then the yellow, then the magenta, then the green. But let's say I want to get the, I want to bring the yellow to the top. I select it, then you go Object, Arrange, bring to front. Now it's all the way in the top. If I get this one, I can bring it to the top or just bring it forward. So the order of things within the layer are changed. Then you got the order of the layers themselves. And if you want to change, you could also, I could put this middle one on top. But now it's called the middle, and the top one's in the middle. So it was a bad choice of names. Oh, but the one thing I wanted to show you, see this middle layer has these elements there. So if I click on this twisty arrow, it's each got its own little mini layer there. So I turn that off. See, they're still there, but we can't see them, so that eyeball kind of hides the things. Turn that off there. And something else that's fun to see is the view. So right now we're looking at this, it's called preview view, but if we make it an outline view, it just shows you the path outlined of everything. So that maybe will come to later. Again, I think I'm showing you too much. It gets confusing to hear it all at once. Okay, let me turn this twisty around. Let me put the middle back in the middle. Okay. Now, actually, I think I'm gonna just throw away this middle layer. So I just hit the little garbage can. That's gone. So now we just have a top and a bottom to deal with. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about alignment. So let's see, we're moving this oval around. Where do we want it? Well, let's get it. Let's say we want it perfectly in the middle of the artboard. So this is the align tool right here. Or no, this is it. Where is the align tool? No, I'm going to have to go up here to the window and find it. Align. There it is right there. And if I click this, it's lined up. Well, aligned it to what? Lined to the artboard. So it's lined up to the left side of the artboard. If I click this, it lines up to the right side, but we want it in the middle. And if this way, it's the middle vertically and the middle horizontally. That's perfectly in the middle. Hit that, it's to the right. So there it's on the top. I'm sorry, the left, top and the left. This will be the bottom. This will be the bottom and the right. But let's get it in the center again. And if we, remember we put our finger down on Option with this, with the selection tool, and then we move it, so we made a copy of it. So now these two objects, I want them to align to each other. So actually, let me just, let me change it just so they don't look exactly the same. And let me get like a normal fill. Okay, and as long as I'm having fun, let me change the color of the stroke to, okay, that looks good. So now these two objects, I'll select both, and I'm going to click this one again and make that the key object. You can tell, well, it has a green extra line there, but a blue line there. So now I'm going to line it to the key object, and I'm going to line. See if I want to put them both on top of each other. So that's going to be the starting point. So now it's directly in the center vertically and horizontally. If I did this, they'll line up on the bottom to each other. Here the top. So do you get that this one is aligning itself to this one? Now, if I click them both again, and then I click on the red one, now this is the key object. So this time the blue is going to move because it's aligning itself to the pink oval. And if I want to align them both to the artboard, I'll do that and then get them both in the middle like that. And distribute is how far away things are distributed from each other. And we'll get into that a little bit later. Okay, another thing worth taking a look at is the transform tool. So let's click on transform. And again, if you can't find it, just go window transform. It's right there. If I click it now, it's going to go away. Let me click on it again to make it come back. And let's get rid of one of these. So now we just have the blue with the green stroke. And if I well, I don't use transform word again, but say I select it, and as I make it bigger or smaller, you will notice that the stroke size stays the same. So like when it gets this small, it's like there's more stroke than there is fill. So say you want to make it smaller, but you want the stroke to kind of shrink proportionally. So what you do is you go into the scale tool and scale strokes. And then when you make it smaller, it's staying proportional. Is that cool? Let me just make the fill do that just so you can see a little more clearly. So the width of the stroke is changing proportionally with the size of the object. Okay, let's go over here to the, so we have the artboard tool over here, but let's go to artboard panels. And right now, there's only one artboard, but sometimes you have two. Oh, you know what I just did also? I put my finger on command and I hit minus. That makes it smaller. Makes our view smaller. Doesn't that make the actual object smaller? I hit plus, it makes it bigger. So that's the same thing as the magnifying glass. So a little magnifying glass here, you click it, it's got a plus, it makes it bigger. Then you put your finger on option, click on it, it makes it smaller. But I almost never use that. I always use the command plus to make it bigger, command minus to make it smaller. And again, command, if you're on PC, that means control. Hopefully you got that by now. Anyway, so making the view smaller, and then I'm gonna draw another artboard over here. And I got my little artboard tool, and oh, you know what else I did also? I put my finger, some of these things I do without even realize I'm doing it, but I put my finger on the space bar, and you get a little hand, and then you can move the whole shingama thing around. You could also just go over here and hit that hand. But whatever tool you're in, so say I'm in the artboard tool, put your finger on the space bar and you can move things around. So now there are two artboards, and this comes in handy because sometimes you might have like a brochure and one side's the front, one side's the back. Actually, if that was the case, they'd be exactly the same size. But so this helps you know if you're working on 1 or 2. And over here on the bottom left, it also shows you now you're working on 1, now you're working on 2. 1 and 2. So let's go back to 1. Okay, so let's fill this back in again. I got select. So now let's make it how about this? So I'll make it a darker color. And let me change the color of the stroke to, let's make this brown. Okay, now what I want to do is go to the transparency window. And right now it's 100%, but you can change the opacity. And let's see, make it like, so it's 50% opaque. Let me make it a little bit smaller. So what I'm doing, if I copy it now, and if you can probably guess if you copy something, if something that's transparent is on top of something else that's transparent, you get so they're like a bunch of layers of different, colored acetate or plastic or something. And there's different, right now this one's selected. There's multiply does something, soft light does something. You kind of play with these and they kind of have different effects with what's below them. And I can make each one that's selected, what does color dodge mean? What does multiply mean? The only way to learn about these things, I think, is just to play with them and find out what happens. If I make it lighten, soft light, I use all these layers in Photoshop. Doesn't do anything. So you just kind of play with these. Let's select that one. But what if it was a different color? And what if I made that multiply? What if I made that what if I go to this one? How do I get that one? Maybe make that red. And what if I make it multiply? So anyway, this is just, you just kind of play around with these. Look what it did to this dark outline there. So you play, you learn, you make discoveries. It's kind of hard to explain.